to the second season of Navigating Realities, where dialogue meets understanding, where we talk about race, religion, and politics. We're back at the Lobby Club, 17 East Front Street in Trenton. And there's an event coming up, the Budget Watch Party, which is going to happen on Tuesday, March 10th from 1 to 4. So come on out to the Lobby Club and be a part of the Budget Watch Party as the new governor presents her budget for the state of New Jersey. Well, welcome, Pastor Linda.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
So good to see you.
This is Pastor Linda Pepe, pastor of First Baptist Church in Morristown. I was a staff member there for a moment.
You were.
Enjoyed my time here, pastor working on racial and social justice at a welcoming and affirming congregation. We'll talk a little bit more about that, because during that time, as a black preacher, when I came to you and we got to know each other, and you tapped me to work on this issue, one of the challenges for me was, one, I had to bring a sermon in 15 minutes. And that's rare for black preachers.
That's a challenge for any Baptist preacher.
And two, which is very unique, I want to get into this discussion, the term God couldn't be used in gender terms.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But trying to use gender inclusive terms for God instead of limiting God to he or she. And, God is not an it. So just being able to use God and being inclusive, because sometimes it triggers people and it limits our ability to see God as bigger than we can actually imagine. If we limit God to an old guy with a robe and a beard, or even it can be triggering the other way as well. If you use God as a she, that can also be triggering. So just being able to let God be God.
Let God be God.
Amen. Right?
It was an amazing church. It still is an amazing church. It really opened me up more to understand God and understand working with people, all types of people, all different backgrounds. And it was just an amazing experience. And I credit you for helping me get there.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being there with us, even though it was, I wish you were still there actually. But it's an amazing group of people who are passionate, and the inclusion really means inclusion. You mentioned the term welcoming and affirming, and we're welcoming and affirming. That means that we are open and affirming to people of all genders, gender identities, gender affirmations, and they will not be challenged on that here. It's not like, come on in and then we're going to say, we love you, but you have to fit into this box. Yeah. People are really welcome. We have a sign outside the front of the door that says, God loves you just the way you are, no matter what, and we mean it. And so to be that inclusive also means that we have to be inclusive in other areas. And it's racially inclusive, all kinds of ADA compliance issues that we took out big mortgages to bring the building up to code, to make sure that we're not making assumptions of people when they come in the door. So you may come in, and just because you're gay, it doesn't mean that you think like us or your theology is just like us. We have a plethora of theologies as well here.
That was another place that I felt, because I felt at home, because my theology was non-traditional in terms of how I relate to. I have an imam, I have a rabbi, I have a pastor, I have a Buddhist teacher. And so that was one of the things I felt so comfortable. An amazing church in Morristown on Main Street, right?
Right on Main Street, right. People ask, where are you on Main Street? I'm not really sure where that is. And we always tell them, between Paciarello's and Carl's Shoes, we're right there.
So let's talk a little bit about, us getting to know each other. We should go, periodically we should get together and go to the... What was it, the Oriental
Pearl. Let's give them a shout out, for all those times they put up with us eating lunch together and talking.
Having lunch at the Oriental Pearl right on Main Street, talking about these issues, life, family, politics, we're going to get into now.
It's true. I remember you continually asking, are you sure you're a Baptist? That's a Baptist church?
Yes.
Remember? And we always preface things by saying, we're not that kind of Baptist. We're just very open to, and really following Spirit and letting Spirit lead wherever that may be. So,
give me your background a little bit. Where did you grow up? When you were growing up, was these topics, race, religion, politics, was that a part of your family conversation? What was it like?
No, I grew up in Newark, north of Newark in Belleville. And if you're from Belleville, you say Belleville instead of Belleville. But, we were raised, redlining was still kind of in effect. So my neighborhood, although the town was diverse, my neighborhood was not diverse. And my local church, we were raised Presbyterian. They picked Presbyterian because we could walk to the church. And the church was not diverse racially either. So it was kind of sheltered, and you go through these periods where you're self-involved and just trying to get through every day as a kid. And I didn't become aware of any racial disparity really until I got into the high school system. Wow. I was very involved in music and theater, all of that stuff. And I realized that the amount of white influence there as opposed to any people of color being in the band. I just thought, oh, well, I guess nobody just learned to play an instrument. Then you find out, of course they're not, because the schools that are in that section of town don't get funding to get instruments, right? So of course there weren't black kids in the band or whatever. So it was that kind of thing, but we didn't really talk about race as, I'll shift that a little bit. We did, but not in an accepting way. Race, there was a fear there around people of other races, even people around other religions or other nationalities. There was always a fear there, like, you kind of protect yourself.
A fear of the unknown, a fear of cultures that you're not comfortable being around, right? Wow.
And I also grew up during the race riots in Newark. Right? In Newark, exactly. So my father was a deputy fire chief. So
really?
So when and he did that for a living, actually. So when he would call up from the fire station and say to my mom, be careful, get ready to go, because they're up to Washington Avenue. And as they got closer, there was more and more fear. And I think we internalized that as kids, that this was a fearful time. We didn't understand it as a time of liberation and rising up and just seeing the disparity and everything. We just saw it as these people are coming to get us. So it took a long time to undo that, as well as the regular general socialization around race in our country. So it took a while to undo some of that stuff.
What was the politics like in your home?
You're going to go there, right?
Look, I grew up, and this is, and I'm gonna say this in the podcast, and it may shock some people. The black community is a very conservative community. I grew up in a very Republican home. My parents are still Republicans to this day. 2026.
It's scary.
So I grew up Republican, and like many black families, they're conservative, and we always say. And I don't want to. I'm independent, so I don't want to give any particular political party any leeway. But we always say, if the Republicans wasn't so racist, they would have more black people participating in that party.
Oh man!
But, so that's a whole nother story.
Okay. We also were raised Republican. My family now has grown into various political groups. I'm also an independent because I just feel like as Christians, Christianity began as a political movement.
Yeah.
This is a movement of liberation and resisting empire. Not, Jesus, the people always say, but Jesus was political. You can talk about politics, and we do. Jesus was political. Jesus wasn't partisan.
Right.
So our thing as Christians is to be able to resist empire. We resist oppression when it comes. We resist discrimination when it comes, abuse when it comes. Those are the things that we take care of. And do we fight empire that way? Yes. Do we fight with evil or violence? No. We resist evil with love, answer evil with good.
I remember preaching a sermon there one time, and I talked about that a little bit. I think it was the kingdom suffereth violence, but violence take about force. That was one of my sermons there. And I remember one sermon, Pastor Linda, I'll make you chuckle about this. Being a black, trying to get this message out in 15 minutes. I was trying to talk about the Greek word love.
Agape? Ophelia.
Ophelia. and it came out fellatio. Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, I do. Do you remember? Oh, and the language police, they came right up after church, with the language police in church.
You remember
Did
that?
he say fellatio? Yes.
I'm so sorry.
He absolutely did. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, and we talked out, and you were laughing at this.
Oh,
So you
my
said, yeah. I
goodness.
said, Pastor, did I say that? She said, yes, you did.
Yes, you did. That's really
That
true.
was funny, but yeah, it was so incredible to hear, be a part of a congregation that talked about these very tough issues, right?
Well, if we shy away from it, we're silent.
Yeah.
If we're silent, we're complicit. And then, you come to church, and what are you getting at church? You're getting just some feel-good message that says, oh, you're all right, or maybe you're not all right. Or the opposite, just a bad message, of it's really bad out there, you have to just, and then people sit around wringing their hands instead of being empowered. And that really is the crux of the ministry, is to empower people to use their voice. All of us are given gifts, God-given gifts. My gifts are not the same as your gifts, but if we use them in harmony with one another, then everything is taken care of. And the thing is that the church traditionally, and I'm using big C church, not my church per se, but the church has historically just not empowered people and just said, just follow what we say to do. And that leaves no room for the Spirit to move any way in a situation like that. And then we're taught to be silenced, right? Especially people of color, be silent. Women, be silent. LGBT community, be silent. Just be quiet and don't. It's almost like the don't ask, don't tell kind of stuff. And if you have gifts, that's fine. Just go into your prayer closet where no one can see you and then just pray. We're meant to be out doing, being, and helping heal. I mean, that's our ministry, right? In Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, it says we're given this ministry of healing and reconciliation. That's it. Yeah. That's the ministry, right? Yeah. And if we're not doing that, take the sign down outside, because we're not playing church. We're just having something else go on. We're having a country club or a seminar. But if we really want to be church is a movement. It's not stagnant, right?
And that's something that rings very loud and clear at First Baptist. Tell me a little bit about when, or was it a moment? How did you become a pastor? Like what was that about?
Listen, if you had seen me 25, 30 years ago, you would never think
really?
That. And in fact, when I told my mom I was going to be a pastor, she said, we have 7 children. Of all of them, not you. Not you. And it just wasn't expected. I was very happy. I was teaching marching band and color guard. And
you were a marching band?
Oh my gosh. I was in it. My husband is a marching band director. He needed some help.
You're those people? My son was a drum major in high school.
I was a drum major in high school.
And the marching band people are nuts.
We are a very different breed. I'll tell you what, even in my junior year, I remember we had to do this survey for, I think I was taking political systems, and we were learning about surveying people, and my survey was about the difference between band people and the rest of the school and the disparity, and there is a big difference between band kids and the rest of the kids. But anyway, so we loved it so much, I ended up doing it for a living and did that for I don't know how many years. And then always involved in the church. We, like I said before, we were raised Presbyterian, and then I started looking for more. I knew there had to be more than just going to church on Sunday, and it seemed like no one was ever talking about God and what we were supposed to do. So I started denomination searching and denomination hopping, and I went to a whole bunch of different denominations before I, pun intended here, took the plunge and became a Baptist. Really? And that's it's where I landed, because I felt the most spiritually free there. And so you were asking about the call. So I was involved in all different kinds of things in the church, teaching Sunday school, or for a while I was the church cook. I did that for a long time. And, there was always this gnawing that God was speaking, but I felt like I was fulfilling everything God wanted until I got out of the marching band thing and I started doing interior design. And
really?
And I did that for, I don't know, a couple of years. And people would come in and they'd ask, and I'd was a Christian, right? So I would pray before people come in, before clients came in. Tell me about, God, tell me what to do. Like, what's the need? And I'm thinking, do they need a yellow sofa? Do they need, a chandelier or whatever? And meanwhile, people would come in, and before you know it, I'm sitting on the sofa talking to somebody about the fact that their wife just died, and they're left with a 12-year-old daughter, and what do they do because they're out of their element? And it was always things like that. And my coworkers used to say, look at Linda, she's gathering her flock. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I just took it off. One day, the guy I used to work with Color Guard was one of my best friends, and he asked me to go to a commitment ceremony for 2 men in Key West. Went for 7 days. It was a ball. And during the course of those 7 days, I got to talk with 20-something, 30 gay men, and about their faith, as well, and what happened to them. And church was an institution that I loved. I was raised there. I loved church. I felt safe there always. And then I found out that these people had been cast out of church, thrown out of church. The saddest story I think I heard was one man who said, I loved church. He said, I went to a Baptist church, he said, and I found Jesus. He said, and I felt so good. And he had gone up the aisle and made a profession of faith like they used to do, and maybe they still do in some Baptist churches. He told the pastor he wanted to be baptized, and then he told the pastor he was gay. So for the next 3 weeks, there were anti-gay sermons from the pulpit.
Oh, wow.
So what happens then to a person like that? The church has said no to them. The church has said, you're not good enough the way you are. You're not good enough as God made you. And making judgments on people, and it broke my heart to hear that. And so person after person, story after story, and I found myself for the first time saying, God loves you just the way you are, no matter what. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. This is the way God has made you. This is the way God has made me. And we're all accepted and loved and cherished by God. And Eric, I don't know what happens when you see you tell that to someone and you see people wanting to believe it. Yeah. Like there's just like a glimmer of hope. Yeah. And you say, okay, if there's that there, like I don't know that there's any better feeling than seeing somebody regain hope that they thought was gone forever. And I came home from that trip saying, I want to do this for the rest of my effing life. Yeah, excuse me.
No, I curse all the time. But the thing about it, like, just seeing someone regain themselves. Yeah. Right? And
their value.
Yeah, because they've been told who they are is not real, is not acceptable, is not appropriate. But let's back up for a moment, because you grew up in a conservative home.
I did.
Where did that compassion, seeing people for who they are, you talk a little about how you got into ministry, but where did that come from?
Again, I grew up in music and theater. God bless theater departments in schools where are a catch-all for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also in my school, I don't know, maybe it was just because it was the late 70s and it wasn't an issue. Maybe it was because we were by the city. And I don't remember a lot of gay bashing or things like that. Everyone was just us. And I also remember in theater, my closest friends in theater, one by one coming out and, coming to grips with who they are and feeling safe enough in that space to say who they were. And there was an acceptance there and a love. That's why I think it was so heartbreaking when I realized that the church was excluding these people, because honestly before that I didn't realize that. Right. that there was so much exclusion. I didn't realize that there was such an impetus for people to be changed. I found out things about ex-gay ministries and gay reparative therapy and things like that. I was horrified and heartbroken for the folks that had endured that, yes, but also heartbroken for the bondage that it puts the rest of the church in, right? Like, because when we're not all free to be who we are, none of us are free. It's not just me, right? It's what what's the theology right there? Ubuntu, right? Unless you're okay, I'm not okay. Right? And we can delude ourselves into thinking that we're okay because we get the freedom to walk around as white, straight, cisgendered people that, we can do anything and go anywhere, and there's privilege with that. But there's not really privilege with that. There's prison with that.
Yeah.
We just don't see it.
Yeah, I think it is. It is so much of an illusion. I'm writing a book about my experience with this
Really?
too. Yeah, it's a book called Facing the Lion. I had a recurring dream, but I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
But here's the thing that's so unique, and too, because it's still, and even in that industry you're in, there's still not a lot of women.
No.
And so, how did that go over? And what did you experience?
Yeah.
Being a woman in a male-dominated, everything in a male-dominated industry, particularly. People have strong beliefs about where a woman's place is in the church. How was that?
Well, it's less, I guess, in more mainline denominations than more conservative denominations, but it's definitely still there. And there are old school people there that still believe women should be silent in church. And I remember when I was first starting out, one particular instance, I was standing in the receiving line after I had preached, and what I thought was a pretty passionate sermon and things like that. And one of the people in line, a couple came by, and my husband was standing with me. And he said, "I don't know about these women preaching in church." He said, "I don't know." And he looked at my husband and said, "I want to know who wears the pants in your family." So quickly, I just interjected and I said, "That depends on who shaved their legs that day." And I just left it like that, because those kind of things are, I don't know, it sounds ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous to the people who have staked their life in being right? Like, there are people that have beliefs that are exclusionary, and it's all tied up together with components like salvation and if I'm doing right or if I'm being right with God. And because that's so important, even nationalism, we're seeing that now with nationalism, right? And it's all tied together. Our theology plays out, even if we say we don't have theology, our theology plays out in our life as to who we are and how we act. And being said, admitting perhaps that we might be wrong, or there might be room for the Spirit to say something else to us, makes us think, well, now what happens to me? If I was wrong about that, then what else am I wrong about?
It's interesting. I mean, we internalize a lot. I guess there's I don't know, maybe some fear about really confronting things that are inside of us that challenge us. And I know, not that I know because I'm not a woman, but I being in a male-dominated society, women always have to question themselves all the time.
Yeah.
Am I good enough? Am I, were there moments in ministry that you questioned, can I really do this?
Sure. Especially, I think, when you're first starting and there's expectations. So if you're a woman preacher, you should wear a suit, right? If you're a woman preacher, you should wear a robe. Well, in a suit, I'm going to tell you, I can't pull off a suit.
I've never seen you in a suit.
You never will. I'm never pulling off a suit. And if you put me in a robe, one of those big black judge's robes, I look like a mailbox with a head. I can't do it. It's not gonna be good for me to feel that way. And so I have to be me. So I started dressing, and I did wear some robes, but they were kind of dressy. In fact, I got them at African American ministers' conferences. I'd buy things there because they felt more feminine to me, or let me live into my identity of who I was. And so there are definitely challenges there. Also, when you would go to region meetings for some denominations, and most of the people at the table are male, and how do you assert a female voice without being looked at like many of our politicians are, who are female, who are like, oh, she's got an awful voice, she's noisy, or trying to demonize, because there's a whole history of demonization with women through the Bible anyway. But I know this, like lots of my female colleagues, if you have a call to do this and you don't live it out, it's like the Bible says, your bones dry up.
Yeah.
If you don't let it out, you've got to live into who you are. And it's just like any other kind of repression. If you're called to something and you don't step up, it's like once you know, and then you don't want to step back into the dark.
Mm-hmm. I remember going not long ago seeing the Broadway show Suffs. Did you see that?
I didn't.
It was playing in Philadelphia not long ago.
About suffragettes.
Yeah, and it was just so amazing to see the women's suffrage movement, not knowing some of the history of the role that African American women played in the suffrage movement, and seeing the sacrifices, and still this day we're still talking about equal pay, equal access.
I know.
And it's just amazing that as far as we come, how much more we have to go.
I know. Right now, the people that say, I don't see any discrimination with women. I've never had to do, whatever. I say, maybe you don't see it, but you're standing on people's shoulders who have sacrificed everything so that you don't feel it.
How does politics play out in the church? I mean, how does that work for the congregation?
Yeah, it's like I was talking about before. If we see something that's happening in government that is hurtful to society, we fight it. That's and there are there red and blue in our church, where people always try to label you as something. Are you a blue church? Are you a purple church? Whatever. And it's hard to be a church where you really want to be inclusive and help people feel safe, feel affirmed, and because there's lots of people that come in that we make assumptions about and say, oh, I think I said this already about being either red or blue or whatever. But it's really just more the fighting.
Welcome and affirming. That means if you're inclusive, then you have to include folks
right.
from the other side, right? I mean, that's some of the integration work racial integration work we were doing there. It's not just an echo chamber. You just can't have one viewpoint. You got to welcome all viewpoints and learn how to disagree without being, at this point, you even can say violent, because the violence is just so real right now.
It so is. And if we're doing church properly, I said this probably 2 Sundays ago, or even maybe last Sunday, this is a practice ground. We have lots of people here from different walks of life, different genders, different political viewpoints, different theologies. If we're not willing to meet people where they are here and get along with them and find out about the person before the label we want to slap on them, this from community organizing, we don't try to change people's minds about something. We try to change what they care about, and then that changes their mind. Changing what they care about happens through a relationship. And so if I come to you and I already have assumptions about who you are and what you believe and things like that, I'm not going to be willing to be as open. If we allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable, I want to meet the Eric inside before I find out what you do or who you are or who you think you are or who you voted for. Then I know you.
Why do you think that's so hard for some people? I mean, at a time period in my life, it was hard for me because I was raised very Black Christian conservative, and we've had in the Black church, we had these discussions about sexuality constantly. And growing up, you would hear these sermons railing against homosexuality.
Sure.
I remember distinctly talking with friends of mine in the church growing up, talking to me and confessing with me about what they're doing. And the church act like it's not happening. I'm like, one of these young kids asked me to come to his church one day. This was not long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. I met him at the Apple store, and he was like, yeah, I never told my dad I'm struggling, but I want you to come to my church. I go to this kid's church, and the assistant pastor is preaching, just railing against what the Bible says about homeless. And I'm looking around the church, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Half the church is gay. I'm like, am I missing something?
I know.
The contradiction or the hypocrisy is just I'm just speaking just from my experience.
I'm there.
In the black church. I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Just be honest and be open about, let people be who they are and not trying to pretend. I guess the question, Pastor, is like, why is it hard for us to have real conversations? Not just about sexuality, religion, like just to have a conversation with people that we believe we disagree with, because many times when we sit down, we talk with people, you realize, oh, really? I didn't know you did. I didn't know you was that. And there are some things that we agree or disagree on. But you're a minister, you're a pastor. Why is it hard for people to sit down and talk?
Oh, I guess it would start with the fact that most of us carry around an insecurity about who we are as well. And so we want black and white thinking. We want truth, right? And that's why you see some of these churches that are busting at the seams, that have this bumper sticker theology on them, and they've put the Bible into black and white, we used to call them 99-cent phrases, right? That something you can slap on a lunchbox or whatever.
What would Jesus do? All that type of stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff where you see, John 3:16 whatever. That's my church. Okay, great. But the Bible's not like that. Right. The scriptures aren't like that. They're porous. They're open. Everything is, but because we live in a society where we thrive on what's right and what's wrong, we don't leave room for gray. We don't leave room for, in our own life, we're always challenged. Get to know what you believe. What do you believe? So you can take a stand, so you can be out there on either a picket line, or you can be, doing something that defines who you are, that says who you believe. But most of us, if we're honest, we don't know what we believe. Right? You can't. And to admit that we have doubts shows signs of weakness, right? So if I'm going to listen to and sit to somebody with a different viewpoint than me and try to understand where they're coming from, I have to look beyond the layers of what is being said into where is it coming from.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do. Yeah,
the fear of the unknown, or the fear of uncertainty. Like, we need answers, right? I mean, everything we're designed, in the movies, you need an ending, right? You need a villain, you need a hero, right? I think they try to wire us to believe that way. And so if there is gray area, people struggle with that. Oh,
for sure. And the church had a big part in that too. Yeah. For centuries, people weren't even allowed to read the scripture for themselves. Good times, everybody, right? Like, you're not allowed to read the scripture. We'll just tell you what it means. And then, agendas get put in through that. And all of a sudden, we have a bunch of sheep walking around saying, this is right because my religious leader told me it's right. So I accept it as truth, and then it becomes their truth. Even though inside it feels like this isn't right. There's something wrong with this, right? But we're not good at confrontation. We confront like people do in sports, right? Yeah. With our sports team, go kill them. You've got to crush that person. You have to tell them your opinion until you make them believe what you believe, instead of being open to say, "Gosh, what if I could learn something?" Like, the fact that we're not lifelong learners of life and of people, and the other thing I think is just the hardness. It's hard to admit that we're a really fragile, mortal, vulnerable people. Yeah. The fear of, I guess in Western culture, we just fear death so much, right? We do.
Where other cultures and countries are more embracing and are more in tune with the reality that you're not going to be here forever. And as I age, as I get older, and 4 adult kids and 3 grandkids now, my mortality is in my face, right? And so I think about,
No, you look great.
Yeah, mortality is in my face. People say, well, you don't look like you got 3 grandkids. I say, but when your Rolodex on your phone, you start seeing specialists. You go from having a primary care doctor till you got this doctor, that doctor, that doctor. So true. Right? You're getting older.
You're getting there.
But it's just like you see this, this mindset, particularly in our political climate now, that, it's better to be feared than to be respected. Like all this nonsense. And so you see this movement of sheer force and power to enforce your will on people, opposed to really being a part of a collaboration of how do we move things forward as a country, as a local community, as a state, as a country, and being on the global stage. Like how do we move forward to dealing with climate change, to deal with like the fact that we're still denying climate change. It's like, it's just mind blowing, right?
It is.
We're still denying climate change.
I know, you can't get past that. It's just like,
Yes.
what?
Yeah.
Have you been here this winter?
Yeah. And so that's how, I guess in this climate, it's hard for people to have these discussions because what you talked about, like people want black and white. It's hard for
They
people
want
to
the
be
truth,
in a
right?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned something really vital, is fear, the fear component. And we've been really discussing this the last few months at church as well. You know, the empire wants you in fear.
Yeah.
There are $2 billion, trillion machines that sole focus is to polarize us and pull us apart. That's their job. And they do it great.
Yeah.
Great.
Really? Yeah.
They're great at it. And then we see that on top of it, there's this fear by force, right? Or violence. And it's violence for violence sake in order to incite fear.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to run a government. Why? Because if you can get people fearful enough, they'll do anything you want.
Yeah.
People that are fearful are easily controlled. And yet we learn, at least in Christianity, we're not given a spirit of fear. You know, perfect love casts out fear. We're not to be fearful. We're supposed to go and walk in confidence and in hope that we can do good despite the fear that's being placed upon us.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the fear aspect of, because, again, you're independent, I'm independent. Most of the country is independent. I think people just are sick of just the polarization. And I think people really...
I wish most of the country was independent.
That's true. That's true. I wish they were as well. I think we really need to get back to really looking at, we're celebrating 250 years coming up. And I was talking with some folks earlier about this. Many Americans, just from my understanding, haven't traveled overseas. And I just got back from Paris, London, Amsterdam, Bruges, outside of, and just being in other countries and seeing how much, their culture, they're in tune with their nationality, and being outside of America, and not that they don't have the issues around but seeing buildings that are thousands of years old, right? Seeing people who aren't caught up around the issue of race. Like, I was in Athens several years ago, and I love Greece. I would buy a house there, move back there. It was just amazing. And seeing some of the things that you see in the text, right? And just realizing that we're celebrating 250 years. This is what gives me some optimism for this country. Those countries have been around for thousands of years. We're celebrating 250 years.
True. We are young.
We're very, very young. We're not even at a toddler yet. We're still just marching towards that direction. And I said this not long ago. I said, it's just like America is just like when you're potty training your little kid. There's some days that the little toddler's gonna do well, and there's some days it's gonna shit on themselves.
Yeah.
And so we're just shitting on ourselves right now.
It's true, and it's just for like little temper tantrums that we have, that we're not getting our own way, that we can't dominate the entire world, that we can't do whatever we want, and those things, it's like anybody who grows into something, but it's not the way we're created to be. Look at nature, right? Look at the world order according to nature. Everything works in harmony with one another. things. There's a synergistic exchange between species, and it works. It works because it's harmonious. We're working with each other and not against each other. And here, this assertion that we have to be, and we have to be the ones that are in charge and doing it, otherwise someone's going to come and take advantage of us. That's
scary.
unhealthy and toxic.
We don't learn from nature. Like, one of the great things about biodiversity, you have all different species operating to bring about medicine and healing. Sure. That's where we get our natural medicines from. Like, biodiversity produce natural things that heal the body, and we take those things and make medicine out of them. And so nature, just the fact that we're not learning from nature, just the fact that we're not, I said history teaches us something. For me, I said history teaches something that we don't learn from history, because every empire eventually crumbles, right?
Oh, yes.
And I would think about this, and I thought about this as one of the things, or several things why empires crumble. If you go back and look at world history, the gap between the haves and the have-nots are one. The exploitive nature of that, climate change. Climate change was one of the major reasons why the Egypt fell. Like you depend on nature to breathe these things. So the denial of climate change, the denial of isolationist, isolating your nation from not having, collaborating with other nations, and in the wealth gap. I mean, I'm optimistic, but we're not trending in the right direction.
We're seeing a system play out.
Yeah.
Right? There's a wonderful book about indigenous people called Sand Talk. It's by Black Indigenous Australian Tyson Young Porta. Wonderful, wonderful read. But what he talks about is our propensity to go ahead and build, and like even cities, we build these cities, everything has to be outsourced because we run out of natural resources. So we go farther and farther to get the resources that we need to bring into the city. So eventually it just fails. The city becomes a desert, and then he points to different deserts around where they've found cities underneath the desert. And of course, they were once cities, now they're deserts. And we don't see that coming because we don't often learn from our own history, but it's where we're headed again. Is there hope, though? You don't see any hope? There's hope.
I like to use the word optimistic, because I think, and it's just my view of it. When I look at the teachings of Jesus, not to get too religious, I don't know necessarily Jesus.
It's okay.
I don't know if he taught hope per se. I think he taught, look inside yourself. What you're looking for is inside you. And hope, for me, sometimes give people an excuse to wait for somebody else to do something.
Well, if that's your definition of hope, then definitely. All right. And my definition of hope is more confidence.
Okay.
Right? There's a confidence that we can make a difference. There's, because when we know our value, when we start being empowered, emboldened, when we get courageous enough to be able to go out and use our gifts, that's when we can make change. That's when healing can happen. And so if I have confident hope, it's in you. It's in the work that you're doing. It's in the stuff that I see happening that are little glimmers and pockets of change. Some of the people that we were talking about before we came on here, people that aren't politicians for being politicians' sake, they're politicians because they're really passionate about healing humanity.
Yeah, I thank you for that, because I feel the same way about First Baptist, knowing that there's a congregation there that any and everybody can go to and won't feel outcast. I mean, that's very unique.
It is. It's work. It takes a lot of work, just like everybody else, right? We have to put ourselves out there. We have to admit all the time that we are an absolute mess. We are messy, right?
All of us are, though. We're human.
All of us are messy, right? But all of us are carrying baggage and hurt that has come from some place that caused us to be who we are, right?
My best friend Tony always say, everybody's life in there. Everybody got some shit going on in their lives, right?
It's true. When you were talking before about fear and fear of death and things like that, I remember I had to do a chaplaincy stint in the hospital for a while, and I remember just a doctor trying to keep somebody alive who was failing, and the family was right at the bedside and saying, keep trying, and the doctor, they'd try again, and then 30 minutes goes by and they're still trying and can't revive the person, still trying, keep trying, and he was really passionate and wanted to keep trying. Eventually we had to call it, right? And as the chaplain, I kind of got the doctor and just said, we need to, are you ready to stop? He said, I don't know what else to do. And the person had to fail. So the doctor left the room. I stayed with the family, did a prayer and things like that you would normally do with a chaplain. And then I was going back to the chaplain's office. I walked through the door, and on the other side of the door, there was the doctor sitting on the floor in a heap, crying. And so I sat on the floor with him and said, what's going on? And he told me about the reason he became a doctor, that he was outside his father's office door while he was having a heart attack, couldn't do anything. And so every time he loses someone, he goes back to that. Right? So there's a fear in there that every time he can't save a patient, he can't save us. And when we put that internally to ourselves, if I can't be in charge and know what I'm doing, if I have to be in fear, something might happen to me. I can't protect myself because security, we haven't even talked about security.
We haven't even gotten to that, but it just sparked something else in my mind, like similar to what people can't move on and move past, whether it's a tragedy, whether it's a relationship, trauma. And I remember one of my favorite bands, rock bands, is U2, and they have a song called Stuck in the Moment. And it says, you got to get yourself together. You got stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. It's just like, it's something being human, right?
It's hard. And the thing is, we can't do it by ourselves. If I'm stuck in replaying trauma over and over again, and there's no one there, I won't allow anybody to help me move through that. I'm stuck in that dark room all the time, all by myself, right?
That's the book I'm writing, because it was my experience, having a recurring dream over and over and over again, and I had to face that dream. But one of the things that you mentioned the word courage. Where does courage come from?
I think courage has to come from within, where we'll take a lot of things that are tolerable for ourselves. Things that happen to us, and we'll just accept it because sometimes it's like, oh well, I guess I didn't do the right thing, or maybe I deserved it, or maybe I'm not good enough. It's interesting though when we see it happen and play out with other people. Like if something was happening to our child or whatever, we would get some type of courage to say, you're not going to touch my child. This is how I am. And I think that courage probably comes from a protective thing, but courage to make change and protect all, that has to come from someplace deeper, don't you think?
Yeah, when you said that, I witnessed those situations where a parent will rise up to protect and defend their child, but they don't have the courage to do the things for themselves.
And that's where value comes in, right? That if there's one thing that I'm passionate about yes, inclusion is wonderful, but it's inclusion is a byproduct of what is underneath of that, and that is we are all inherently valuable. That God cherishes us, that we have importance, that we're loved. Like God calls us holy, righteous. Like those are acronyms. Those are adjectives we don't use to describe ourselves. We don't look in the mirror in the morning and say, "Oh, I'm holy."
That's because we go to the negative things that we see in the Bible. It's like, forgive me, people who are watching this, but it's like Kanye West. Like I've been obsessed with Kanye West's song "Runaway." Because it speaks to me. He says, I'm addicted to the things pointing out the things that I don't like the most. So he's telling a person running, but I'm so negative. I'm always pointing out your flaws. And I think when you read the text, people gravitate towards the negative bias. Psychologists talk about this, opposed to what, like you said, what God said or what Jesus said about you. The kingdom of heaven's within. And they're like, I'm a sinner. Like, God damn it, at some point you got to give that up, right?
And where did that come from? The church, right? You're broken. You're a sinner. You're so bad that God had to kill his own kid in order to make your life right. Do you know what kind of a trip that puts on people? That's trauma. So then you talk about religious trauma, then talk about sociological trauma, right? Because this is the way capitalism functions on selling things that are wrong with you, right? So you're not pretty enough. Look, I could get rid of that scar on your face. Look, I could do, so that you have this picture perfect airbrushed version of yourself that could be if you buy our products, right? So we're sold that bill of goods. So and then we're told we can't govern ourselves. We're too stupid to, live by a moral code that we can probably. Everybody has to tell us everything about us, about what to do, as if we have no agency at all. God's given us all the agency that we need, right? But if we don't see our value, we can't engage that agency.
And I'm not questioning if you want to get plastic surgery, have at it, because I even thought about getting these bags removed under my eyes. But the pressure to be perfect. I got news for folks. You'll never be perfect.
You'll never be
so
perfect.
Just accept your flaws. There's a chapter in my book, Facing Contradiction. Human beings are a contradiction.
Yep.
And you need to accept that. Until you accept that, you're still going to be chasing something that's not real.
It's so true. And it's so freeing once you do.
Oh my
right?
God.
It's so freeing. It's like, I don't have to be all things to all people. I don't have to look like Barbie. I don't have to look like, all of these things that we're told as women, even right?
Women got it worse when it comes to looks, boy.
My gosh.
Women can't ever get it right.
No. Men, if they have this gray here, that they're distinguished.
Yeah, distinguished. Yeah.
Me, I'm like, you look haggard, man. That's the way it is. Double standard all the time.
Absolutely.
But you know what that is? That's the stronghold of the patriarchy.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's so true.
Where most, if not all, discrimination comes from.
Yeah. You said it best. You said it better than me.
Yeah.
We got to wrap up, but a few more questions, because this is what we got to go to Oriental Pearl. That's
I know. I was just thinking, like, I know, and that woman would kept just bringing us extra stuff.
Yeah.
Try this.
What would you say to a young lady who's thinking about going in ministry? What advice would you give a young?
We need you.
Wow.
We need you. We need your voice. We need your gifts. We need your whole self. We need you to be able to be vulnerable and show people that it's okay to be vulnerable. I think there's some, and this is, I may sound like I'm gender stereotyping here myself, and perhaps I am. You can call me out on that if I am. There is something about a woman's leadership that does allow, if they're vulnerable, that's a big if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and men can do it too, we can empower other people to share their vulnerability, because it's only in doing that we can heal, right? And if we don't have young women that are willing to step in and do that, I don't, will God find another way? Of course, God will find another way, but we need you. That's what I would say.
That's not gender bias. That's facts.
That's fact. Okay.
Women are the life givers of you're life givers. Like, it didn't come from us.
Yeah.
We can't. Can you imagine a man trying to have a baby? We can't. We're
well,
pain. You want to talk about pain? Shit.
I don't know.
Like, that would work. It wouldn't work.
I'm not going there, because I've got lots of different types of people out there. So I'm going to say, young women, we need you.
Yeah. And here's the thing about accepting that vulnerability. Audre Lorde said something, and I like to preach. And the Lord said, and I'm talking about Audre Lorde.
Yeah.
She talked about women always being, criticized for being emotional. By the way, I don't buy women more emotional than men. I think men are just as emotional. We've just been trained not to use it. I remember one time I had a friend of mine whose woman left me, and you ever seen a man and a woman leave? It's not a pretty sight.
Not good.
But she said, that emotion is where women's power is. And it just blew me away, because women are taught, you're too emotional. But she said, that's where the women's power is.
Yeah.
And you can tap into that power and that emotion, of course.
And then channel it. That's the whole thing, really, with emotion, right?
Yeah.
You can have emotion that comes from passion, and then that passion can go out and be proactive.
Absolutely.
To heal.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have no doubt that, we can talk about the gender stuff, but who run the world really? I mean, if women really rise up and take power and unify the way they could, like I believe Beyonce, women run the world, but we just don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
think
so,
we're supposed to do it together.
yeah, it's I mean,
Yeah.
like when you think back in the ancient times, like Egypt had women pharaohs.
Sure.
Right? I mean, like
Sure.
this Western society is just so screwed up. But women pharaohs, they ruled. Like,
Why not? Right?
so
Some of the biggest rulers in human history were women.
Yeah. And so we always ask this question at the end of the podcast. What is your favorite quote and why?
Well, I have two, and they're both from the same person.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the first one, they're both by Meister Eckhart. Do you know who that is?
No.
It's a theologian, scholar of the ages. And he's got two. The first one I like just because I love it. He says, God and I are like two fat people in a boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. And I like that just because it makes you laugh like it makes me laugh. But the other one for him is more foundational for who I am as a preacher and as a pastor and as a woman, actually a person. And that is, it is a lie, any talk of God that does not comfort you.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
I mean, that has a host of implications. If you're seeing fearful, if you get afraid of God, that God is going to punish, smite, whatever word you want to use, you're not understanding the God of love, God loves us unconditionally. God loves us without merit. I mean, like the example of Jesus on the cross forgiving before anybody's ever asked forgiveness, just saying forgive them. God, what more example do you need? We don't need to always be running around saying I'm not good enough. Do you have like 2 minutes? First, I always use this analogy of being on a tightrope. In Christianity, we walk this tightrope of being right with God, where we're sin-free, we've repented, we're great, and we walk on this tightrope, and then, not doing anything wrong, and then sooner or later, what happens?
You do something wrong.
We fall off the we fall off the tightrope, right? We end up in the face down in the mud, filthy, gross. And then what does the church tell us to do? Is crawl to Jesus, get repentance, get cleaned up, and Jesus does, washes us off and whatever. And then we get back right up on that tightrope and do that. And that is over and over and over. That cycle repeats over and over. It's a fearful, toxic cycle, right? To think that we could stay on that tightrope for 5 minutes without doing something wrong. Until we understand that we're acceptable up on the tightrope and we're acceptable face down in the mud, just as beautiful to God and acceptable to God, we don't have a chance.
Wow.
Right? But there's so much fear that the church has perpetuated for generations about and around God, which is why we've missed it. We've kind of missed that main message of healing and unconditional love.
I don't think there's any better ending than what you just gave.
Oh, amen.
I mean, that's why I love you. I mean, it's just
No,
like,
I love you too.
We haven't talked in such a long time, but this is what I wanted people to see and hear while we had this podcast. It's like to have these hard discussions about things that are difficult to talk about.
They are.
But talk about them in a way that people can hopefully get some sense of, I'll use your word, hope.
Hope.
Right? I like optimistic, but hope about maybe I am not that bad.
Yeah.
Maybe
and
I
if
do
you
deserve
believe
love.
you are that bad, that's okay. God doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I guess that's what we have to get into our heads, that regardless of how we see ourselves, God sees us as pure and holy and righteous.
It's hard for people to accept, though.
Yeah, that's why we have each other, to help us accept it.
Yeah.
Right? Help us come to grips with it and encourage each other.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Pastor. This
Thank
has been
you.
An amazing time. It's always
Beautiful.
a time.
Always a good time with
always,
you.
every guest I refer to my notes, not because I need them, but just to make sure I don't miss anything. Hey, you just knock out of the park. I didn't even look one time. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank
God
you all
bless
for
you.
joining us for this episode in our second season. As you can see, Pastor Linda Pepe is just an amazing person. First Baptist Church in Morristown is just an amazing congregation. And if you need a place to go, hang out, to talk,
Amen. Always welcome.
that's the place to go. Thank you so
God
much.
bless.
That's it. That's a wrap. This is Reverend Eric Dobson, and this is Navigating Realities podcast where dialogue meets understanding. Follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can find us on all streaming platforms.